Then along came the networked world. If that interconnected, standards-based world took hold, Microsoft would be the most vulnerable. Its insatiable ambitions notwithstanding, not every piece of digital equipment in the world could be part of one architecture, controlled by one company. Implications of a post-PC world. There were further implications of a networked world. The PC would be pushed off center stage. Very fast, high-bandwidth networks would allow many of the PC's functions to be performed by larger systems inside companies and the network itself. This system would allow an untold number of new kinds of devices to attach to networks, intelligent TVs, game consoles, handheld devices, cell phones, even household appliances and cars. The PC would be one, but only one, of many network access devices. And if the world was going to be populated by billions of different kinds of computing devices, there would be huge demand for customized chips to power each of these unique devices. More important for IBM, increasing numbers of people and enterprises conducting business over networks would drive a corresponding increase in computing workloads. The difficult task of managing all of that free-flowing digital information certainly was not going to be done on desktop computers. Those workloads would have to be handled by large-scale systems, meaning huge demand for computing infrastructure products, in addition to networking gear. Finally, this new landscape would change who made technology buying decisions. In a PC and client-server world, consumers, end users, and small department heads were in the driver's seat. But with the action shifting back to enterprise systems and mainstream business strategies, the decision-makers would once again be chief technology officers and senior business leaders, people IBM knew and understood. All of this wasn't so neat, tidy, and clear to us at the time. But there were indications that the world of computing was indeed shifting in ways that, at least in theory, played to IBM's traditional strengths and assets. We would have to do an enormous amount of work and take significant risks, from continuing to open up all our products, to building the services business. But even the chance that the game might be thrown open to a new set of leaders was powerfully motivating. We were going to take our fate into our own hands. We were going to play offense. 14. Services: the key to integration. Some people might have been surprised to read in the previous chapter that IBM placed a big bet on services. I mean, hasn't IBM always been known for its doting customer support? Wasn't superior customer service one of IBM's cornerstone beliefs? Wasn't IBM revered for standing by its customers no matter what happened, at any hour of the day or night? As a customer, I always valued IBM's attentive service. It made up for certain IBM products that weren't quite as powerful or cost-effective as others on the market, and it, almost, justified IBM's very high prices. But that is not the kind of services I'm talking about here. The big bet we made was on another kind of services that would address customer needs that frankly didn't exist during the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, prior to the Big Bang of rampant industry disaggregation. Traditionally, IBM's services were completely tied to products, more specifically, products bearing IBM logos. If an IBM system went down, IBM fixed it. However, if customers had a problem with a product from Digital, Compaq, or Amdahl, or if they wanted help installing some other company's equipment, they had to fend for themselves. Services was an adjunct to the main product business. Enter Denny Welsh. As with all things in life, luck plays a big part. I got lucky twice at IBM. The first time was at a meeting in 1993. With Denny, a long-term IBMer, who was running the services organization. The second time was the arrival of the internet and the big bet we made on the networked world. Coincidentally, Denny had a strong hand in that, too, more on that later. When I arrived at IBM, Denny was running a wholly owned IBM subsidiary named the Integrated Systems Services Corporation. ISSC was our services and network operations unit in the United States, a promising but minor part of IBM's portfolio. In fact, it wasn't even a standalone business in IBM. It was a subunit of the sales force. No one forgets a meeting with Denny. He's a big man, friendly, quick to laugh, but intense. He was a former Army pilot and air defense officer who'd made his IBM career in the unit that built highly technical systems for United States government projects, including the Apollo moon program. He was in the control room at Cape Kennedy for Neil Armstrong's historic Apollo 11 launch to the moon. It was our first private meeting, but he didn't waste much time on small talk. He told me that his vision of a services company was not one that did just IBM product maintenance and strung together computer codes for customers. He envisioned a company that would literally take over and act on behalf of the customers in all aspects of information technology, from building systems to defining architectures to actually managing the computers and running them for the customers. My mind was afire. Not only was he describing something I'd wanted when I was a customer, for example, I had tried unsuccessfully to outsource the running of RJR Nabisco's data centers, but this idea meshed exactly with our strategy of integration. Here was a man who understood what customers were willing to spend money on, and he knew what that meant, not just the business potential for IBM, but the coming restructuring of the industry around solutions, rather than piece parts. However, Denny pointed out, this system was not going to be easy to implement inside the IBM culture. To be truly successful, we would have to do things that would shake the place to its roots. For example, the services unit would need to be able to recommend the products of Microsoft, HP, Sun, and all other major IBM competitors if that, in fact, was the best solution for the customer. Of course, we'd have to maintain and service these products as well. Moreover, Denny believed the services unit would have to be separated from the regular sales force, because our sales force would never permit an IBM services person inside their account if there was any chance that the services rep would sell anything other than IBM products. Finally, he pointed out that the economics of a services business were very different from those of a product-based business. A major services contract might last 6 to 12 years. An outsourcing contract for, say, 7 years might lose money in the first year. All of this was foreign to the traditional world of product sales and would create problems for our sales compensation system and the financial management system. I left my session with Denny both thrilled and depressed, a state of confusion I experienced often in my early days at IBM. I was thrilled that I had discovered a base from which we could build the integration capability our customers so desperately needed and, in so doing, provide the raison d'etre for keeping IBM together. I was depressed to realize that despite the powerful logic that this services-led model was IBM's unique competitive advantage, the culture of IBM would fight it. Thus began another major challenge, establishing this powerful new business, and at the same time integrating this unit into IBM so that it was viewed, not as a threat, but as a great new ally of our traditional product units. I knew this was going to be an exquisitely difficult trick to pull off. My experience in prior jobs told me that intense rivalries between units of a large company were a prevalent behavior pattern. The units that had been the traditional base of a company more often than not resisted, overtly or silently, the emergence of a new sibling, either homegrown or an arrival through acquisition. Building the organization despite Denny's view that his unit should be a standalone business, not a subset of the sales team, I did not break it out initially. Rather, I spent countless hours working with our teams to develop a sense of mutual dependence between the services and sales people. Services people had to learn that the sales team could get them in the door. The salespeople had to realize that services specialists could develop major new avenues of revenue in their accounts. Still, there were fireworks. Throughout those critical early days, it seemed there was a crisis a week between services and some other IBM unit. Many of our brand executives or sales leaders went ballistic every time the services unit proposed a product solution that incorporated a competitor's product. On more than one occasion I found one of these people in my office, railing against the renegades from services. My answer was always the same: you need to invest the resources necessary to work with the services team to ensure they understand the competitive advantages of your products. View them as a distribution channel for your products. Your competitors do. Meanwhile, we started to pull the services units together on a global basis. As I said, Denny ran just a United States services unit. There were dozens of other such services organizations spread all over the world. They had totally different processes, pricing, offerings, terms, and brand names. I asked Denny to create a unified organization, still under the wing of the sales force, and introduce outsourcing and network services globally. This was a Herculean task: common problem solving, methodologies, nomenclatures, skill definitions, capturing and disseminating knowledge on a global basis, and hiring and training thousands of new people every year. By 1996 I was ready to break the services unit out as a separate business. We formed IBM Global Services. The change was still traumatic for some of our managers, but it was eventually accepted as inevitable by most of our colleagues. Had the effort to build IBM Global Services failed, IBM, or at least my vision of IBM, would have failed with it. In 1992, services was a $7.4 billion business at IBM, excluding maintenance. In 2001, it had risen to a $30 billion business and accounted for roughly half of our workforce. I would guess there are few companies that have ever grown a multi-billion-dollar business at this pace. There were several reasons customers were pouring so much investment into services.